The dust has settled after the Mexico Major, and all teams across Tier 1 leagues have had time to think about what they want to do moving forward. Some teams have been happy with their progression and performances, and other teams have felt like it's time for a change to try and find that missing ingredient to their recipe. In this video, we're going to run through some of the biggest transfers of the window, and what those players might be able to bring to their new team. If you go on to enjoy this video, a like would be appreciated. Feel free to subscribe if you want more similar content to this on your timeline. Now let's get into it. Starting off with North America, and we saw some of the bigger transfers of the window. And of course the main transfer being one of the biggest transfers we've seen over the years, as Canadian makes his return to competing, joining DarkZero esports. For me, this is the perfect team for Canadian. I think with his ideologies on the game, outside of SSG and NA, there's no better team for him to join. One of the main highlights of this transfer for me is that he is a great role model and mentor for young players Pambazu and NJR. If a hard-headed young player is going to listen to anyone for advice, it's going to be Canadian, as he has won 2 invitationals and he has been the talisman for his team at the top level of competition for years. He can teach these players about composure, consistency, and what it takes to be winners at the highest level. So after how well NJR and Pamba performed at the major, this is the guiding hand that they needed to allow that talent to flourish and not be wasted. So look out for them this stage. He mentioned when announcing his return before he joined DZ that he wanted to build a new legacy, and there's no better place for him to do it. DZ are an org and a roster with strong ideologies that too are also looking to build a legacy and leave a mark on the international R6 scene. This team has always just been a few steps away from international greatness, and bringing in one of the most decorated players ever to grace the scene is therefore a great move for them, especially considering that Troy still seems to be hungry and motivated to succeed. BC will now be moving back to a coaching role with Mint, but don't underestimate how much value they will still have, as these 3 big brain experienced players, including Canadian, will be a force to be reckoned with when it comes to strong fundamentals and strategy for this DarkZero team. And hey, I'm sure it will be great seeing old teammates Canadian and BC link back together for another rodeo in R6 esports. Man, what a crazy move. I can already imagine seeing Canadian.dz in the server putting down that diffuser and wearing that purple jersey. Now I'm even more hyped for NAL than I already was. Will this be the transfer that allows this new mix of players to finally make DZ winners on the international stage? Comment what you think down below. Next in NA, I wanted to look at Tomas going to Mirage. Mirage have been chopping and changing in these last 12 months. They reshaped most of their roster when the Canadian division merged with the North American sector, with Not Loading and Quartz being the 2 remaining players. We then saw HotanCold join the team for Stage 1, as Quartz dealt with visa issues. As we all know, they let HotanCold go to SSG for Stage 2, and Quartz was now available to play. Despite having a solid first stage as a rookie, Mirage weren't able to reach their 3rd place from Stage 1, and felt they needed another change heading into this 3rd and final stage of the season. And Quartz is now being swapped out for XSET's IGL this season, Tomas. Tomas brings a lot to any team for various reasons. Not only is he one of those few IGLs that doesn't just play hard support but can frag and play flex while still getting decisive kills, but he is also known for having great vibes. Mirage seem to be one of the more quiet rosters when it comes to NAL in comparison to the other end of the spectrum of a team like Sonic's, so having that hype man at the end of each round really might fire them up in this 3rd stage and help them build momentum through matches. I can see Dream and Tomas having great synergy as they are both really positive players and will need to be on the same wavelength round to round, with Dream usually being the hard support. I also imagine that a big factor behind this move was to elevate the amount of pressure that has been on Nyx to effectively entry while still IGLing, and I'm hoping the role is likely being moved over to Tomas, so Nyx can focus on getting in the building with Ash and making space for the team. We saw Benji and HotanCold lead the charge in Stage 1, and similarly Benji and Quartz in the 2nd stage, so Nyx now needs to step up to fill that gap and be able to work in tandem with Benji, as if only one of them is firing each game, they will severely be lacking in fragging power in the meta we are currently in, especially if they make it to international events and want a chance at succeeding on the main stage. I would definitely say this is a step up from XSET to Mirage for Tommy, but he is a player that has played at the level of a team like Luminosity previously, so I hope that he doesn't feel overwhelmed by the job that he has been brought in to do. And anyway, you know what they say, pressure makes diamonds, so if he can have a really good end to the season, he might really improve himself as a player and end up being one of the most impactful players when all is said and done at the end of the season. Finally, I wanted to look at NVK's return to Siege as he heads over to XSET in Tomas's place. Now, this is a very exciting transfer to look at, as NVK is a household name when it comes to Siege, as before retiring in 2020 after the EG Ubisoft drama, he was a Pro League and 6 Invitational winner. He is one of the most experienced players in North America, and bringing that to XSET might be just what they need. You hope that he understands this as he settles with his new team, with most of them spending a lot of their time in their career so far in Challenger League, compared to his years playing at the top level of competition. It can sometimes be difficult for seasoned players to make their advice relatable to younger fresh players, but NVK at the time and still to this day is the youngest player to ever win a 6 Invitational, which he collected on PC back in 2017. So if there's anyone these young players on the roster should feel inclined to listen to, then it's him. He also is a player that is willing to buckle down for the ride and build something over multiple years, as he stuck on EG long after Canadian headed to SSG and Geo to TSM, committing himself to the project. And with all the chopping and changing we've seen from XSET this season and the drama that has surrounded it, having a sturdy player like NVK in your ranks should really help keep these group of players from falling out with each other, even if things might get tough. And he should also be a good counterbalance to the aggression of XSET, coming from a roster that had players like Canadian and BC on. So as long as he's been making sure to stay sharp on his gun skill, hopefully he can add another dimension to these group of players that are repping the set. And jumping into Europe, we saw Rogue say goodbye to Corey and bring in another German player, welcoming Team Secret's Prano to their roster. Prano took a brief hiatus in Stage 2, departing ways with Secret after a bottom place finish in Stage 1 of EUL 2021. But Prano is a player of great ability, as he was a standout player for me back in the 2020 season, but he just never seemed to be able to find his feet again this year. We know he is an aggressive player that likes to play roles like Sophia, but he is versatile and especially on defense is able to play a variety of different roles. This is perfect for a team like Rogue, who also play a wide variety of roles and don't just stick with the same 5 operators over and over. Every player on Rogue are gunners, but on most maps, someone still needs to play certain roles like Hard Breach or Flank Watch, so it will be interesting to see how they spread the roles out through the team on each map. But regardless of whether he's on first entry as Sophia or watching their back on Nomad, he should be a valuable player to their roster, as it's another mechanically gifted player to face up against the opposition. Leon therefore still remains as the one non-German player on that roster, so you hope that Prano is still able to make his voice heard however it is that they relay their comms with the 2 different languages. And honestly, good luck to him, as it would be a great redemption story to see him go from being dropped from Secret to joining Rogue and helping them bounce back from an underwhelming Stage 2 showing. An ex-Secret player moves on, and a new player joins them in hopes of making a difference, as unfortunately for me, just as I finished recording this video, Team Secret announced Kendrew as their new player, so I'm adding this into the video after it's finished, in case it seems a bit out of place. Kendrew was a player I spoke about in my video from the start of the season about teams to look out for this year, and I gave him a special mention at the end for his move to Kovana as their IGL. Many of the points still apply about him being a leader but also a very consistent player for his team, even when they're not in so great form. We saw the same thing on Kovana through their ups and downs, but this time round on Secret for me, the big difference will be that according to Liquipedia, he is not going to be the IGL. The IGL is a role that can make or break a player. Some players can feel understandably overwhelmed, and Elems from BDS has spoken about how sometimes it can be difficult to give calls and make mid-round adaptations while still having an impact on the game with kills. Kendrew is a really talented flex support player, and he has had some big plays over his time at Navi and Kovana, so with Packball holding on to the IGL role, I'm hoping that we will see more big plays from Kendrew, as there will be less emphasis on him having to see everything, potentially meaning he can play a bit more into his feelings in each moment of a round and put a little bit more focus on his own gunfights. He is going to a team that is another primarily English speaking roster, so he can fully bring his communication skills to this team, and Secret have a structured philosophy about the game, so his strategical experience will be important for him to bring along with him too. Will he be the difference to revive a currently fairly flat performing Secret roster? I'm excited to find out in Stage 3. And finally, in the LATAM region, Brazil had some big news in the last few days of the window, as the iconic long-standing roster Team Liquid waved off Sexy Cake and Moringa and brought in Black Dragon's Resetz along with up-and-coming support player Ask. This video is about the biggest and most interesting transfers of this window, so for this section specifically, I'm going to focus on Resetz as he has been playing in the BR6 already this season. And talking of, this season and more so Stage 2 has been really good for the Black Dragons roster. BR6, unlike other regions, stacks points over a full season season instead of resetting the points at the start of every stage. So despite a 6th place finish in the second stage, they were one of the most impressive teams of that stage, and with a top 6 finish scraped Copa Elite 6, where they impressively made it out of the groups, sending home FaZe and 9Z in the direct matchups. And in the BR6, they found wins in stage 2 against most teams, with some big highlights being victories over Ninjas in Pyjamas, Furia, and our new major winners, Team 1. Resetz played mostly on entry roles on attack such as Sophia and Yana, but on defense he was a lot more flexible, and this is good for Liquid, as even their best gunners like Nesk and Paulu play more than just your typical Mozzie, Vigil, Jaeger, etc., as we've seen Paulu for example play on ops like Mirror multiple times. Hopefully this will mean that Resetz is not stifling Nesk or Paulu's game, and vice versa, considering it will not be a case of forcing Resetz onto roles like Maestro and Mute, as he's used to playing these roles this season against the best Brazil has to offer. I'm just interested to see what Liquid are doing, as both these players are quite similar to those they are replacing when it comes to roles, but I would say they slightly lean more towards aggression now. Ask is a support player who is a direct replacement for Sexy Cake, and despite having high standards to reach up to, it will be a simple switch up. However, Moringa was slightly less aggressive than Resetz, especially on attack. He did not play roles like Sophia and Yana this season like Resetz did, but the transfer starts to make more sense on defense, where Moringa was often chopping and changing which operator he was playing, from off-site ops to hard support anchors, so I imagine we will see the same out of Resetz. The interesting part for me is how they will implement him on attack. Will Liquid reshape their whole playstyle to fit another entry style player onto their team, or will Resetz have to adapt his game to fit the standard Liquid structure? I think that final option will be the case, and he will likely play a big role in the team, linking the support players of Ask and PSK to the fraggers of Nesk and Paulu. I'm gonna give Liquid some time to settle though, and it wouldn't surprise me if they have some difficulties in their matchups in stage 3, as this is the first time since 2019 that this org and the majority of players have been working on a new project. It's a brave move that some people aren't too happy about, but Liquid are looking to shake things up after having so many close misses to success in the last few years. Overall, what a great window. Some of these transfers really have potential to change the landscape of regional leagues and the international scene alike. XSET, for example, have constantly been regarded as a team with great individual talent but some kind of disconnect to getting results, so bringing in someone like NVK really might stabilise this team and strengthen their mentality, so we could definitely see them start to push their way up the NAL. And at the other end of the spectrum, Liquid picking up 2 less experienced players could massively backfire and leave them off the pace of a region that is dominating Siege right now. From an extreme perspective, we could be looking back at this transfer window in a year's time, saying how Canadian was the piece that raised DZ to their first international title, and Liquid now consistently struggling to get the edge over rising teams like Team 1 and Furia. On the flip though, we might look back saying Canadian ultimately gave it his best but couldn't elevate DZ to a championship, and Liquid's brave move being the change up they needed to bring them another title after all these years. Hit a like on the video if you're as excited for these transfers as I am, subscribe if you're enjoying the vids and want more, and I'll catch you as the stage begins. Peace.